If you own a camera or just got one, you've probably noticed the mode dial on top of the camera with letters such as M, S, A, and P. What do these letters mean? What are the different modes, and which one should you use? Well, today I'm answering that. I'm Noah from Anything Cameras, the channel that focuses on helping you improve your filming and photography. And today, as I said, we're talking about camera modes. Let's jump right into it with M. M stands for manual, and this allows you to set all elements of the exposure triangle by yourself, and the camera won't affect them in any way. By the way, if you aren't familiar with the exposure triangle, then click the video in the cards above that will give you an in-depth explanation and tutorial about how to use it. While manual allows you to set all of these settings yourself, it does usually give you the option of setting ISO yourself or setting it to auto so that the camera controls that part of it, but you control the rest. P is our next one, and P stands for Program AE. Sometimes you will see this labeled instead of P as just AE, or sometimes PA, PE, PAE, something such as that. And Program AE stands for Program Auto Exposure, and this will set all of the different elements of the exposure triangle for you, but again, sometimes offers you the option of setting ISO yourself or setting it to auto. S, or sometimes it's labeled SV or TV for shutter, shutter value, or time value, is where you set the shutter yourself, but the camera will do the rest. Again, this usually allows you to set the ISO yourself or set it to auto. A, or AV, something along those lines, stands for aperture or aperture value or aperture priority if it's labeled AP. And this allows you to set the aperture yourself, which of course affects exposure and depth of field. But guess what? It also usually allows you to set the ISO by yourself or set it to auto. Then there's video. Surprisingly, there's only one mode for video on most cameras, whereas there are at least 5 for photo, which doesn't really make any sense, but video is pretty self-explanatory. This is what allows you to take video on your photo-oriented camera. Sometimes cameras won't have this, they'll just have a record button. But if your camera does have a video mode, then you will have to actually switch to that mode before pressing the shutter or record button to actually start taking videos. Now, the weird thing about video mode is that there are 2 options within it that you sometimes have to dig through the menus to find. And this is whether, usually by default, the camera sets the exposure by itself for video, or you go and dig through the menus to change the option to allow you to set the exposure manually. Now, these have all been pretty simple thus far, but the next couple are a little bit more complicated, but only a little bit. The next one is full auto mode. This will be called different things. Sometimes it'll even be split up between different modes, depending on what you plan to use it for. So sometimes there's a portrait mode, sometimes there's a landscape mode, but all of these are still full auto. And full auto not only sets all of the exposure triangle settings by itself, including ISO, it doesn't allow you to set that yourself, but it will also usually set things such as the picture profile, white balance, or sometimes even image quality by itself. Oftentimes you'll also see custom modes, which are either represented by C or CU followed by a number if there are multiple of them, or sometimes just numbers. And these modes allow you to save your current settings to that custom mode so that you can just switch between them for, say, photo and video, or portrait photos and landscape photos, or something of the sort. You can set these by digging through your menus and finding the right options. Unfortunately, I can't give you a more detailed instruction because it varies so much between different cameras and camera manufacturers. Now, if your camera has more modes than this, such as flash off, or night scene, or anything of the sort, chances are it's just another full auto mode that is set for a different scene. Usually these different auto modes will be seen on more consumer-oriented cameras versus professional cameras, but may still appear on your camera. Okay, but now's the big question. Which one should you use? Well, personally, I recommend using manual mode and letting the camera set the ISO for you. If you do this, you'll just have to keep an eye on exposure compensation. If you don't know what that is, check our settings video out in the cards above. In my opinion, this is the most versatile mode, but still gives you all the control you need with the extra insurance that you don't mess up the exposure if you set the ISO to auto. In some cases though, you may want to use shutter priority or aperture priority so that you have less control if you are working in a tricky lighting situation. But whatever mode you use is up to you and your workflow, as long as you enjoy taking the images and sharing them with everybody. But hopefully this helped clear this up for you. If you want to watch more of our videos in the future, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. And if you want to keep watching our videos right now, then you can click this video right here, which YouTube recommended for you, so you should like it.